Holding information.
And what makes a terrorist really a terrorist? Let's talk about it, y'all. Middle America.
And you ain't black. I don't know what I said.
The first time ever any...
What are you people?
We're Americans.
We are Americans indeed. My name is Vin.
I'm sorry.
And we are just two conservative, right-wing evangelicals. I don't know if we could be.
I was gonna say.
I think the
possibly
right.
booted from our own camp.
Yeah, I think our friends in the right have already excised us. So I guess we're free agents, dear listener. I guess we're free agents. So I was watching Crystal and Saga this morning, or whatever it was that I woke up, and I saw something very interesting. Now, dear listener, dear Middle Americans, if you want to be part of the Middle America community, your brother hangs out there a lot. It's facebook.com/America Middle. It's completely free. You can hang out, opine, do whatever you want to do, that type of thing.
It is a free speech environment, so.
It is a free speech environment, so you've got to.
Yourself.
It's one of those situations. What's up, Kamikaze? Good to see you. Okay, so here's Crystal and Sagar, and they're discussing the Centers for Disease Control and a article that just got released from none other than the New York Times, which just charged us our $14 a month for our subscription. Oh. But that is what that is. Shout out to John Dolph.
Make sure we're not both subscribed.
And let's check it out. Here's Crystal and Sagar. Apple Chat in the house.
Buddy.
What do I think about the truckers being labeled terrorists? I will explain that to you soon because there is a correlation somehow, some way. All right, guys, check this out right here. CDC caught hiding that's what they're saying. Let's see. Let's check it out.
Love it. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the CDC. This is a really interesting story here from the New York Times, but it's very important. I also think it's funny the way that they framed it. They're like, oh, this just continues to happen, fueling questions. It's like, no, it should fuel questions. That's the whole point. Let's put it up there then on the screen, which is that the CDC is not publishing large portions of the COVID data that it collects. Now, specifically, for more than a year, the CDC has collected data on hospitalization for COVID in the U.S. and broken it down by age, race, and vaccination status. But it has not made most of the information public. In fact, when the CDC did publish the first significant data set just 2 weeks ago, it left out numbers for, quote, a huge portion of the population, which is 18 to 49-year-olds.
What?
Yes, dear listener.
Oh, my word.
This is not Joe Rogan. Shout out to Joe Rogan. This is not Jimmy Dore. Shout out to Jimmy Dore. This is the New York Times reporting on this, dear listener. I will rewind this for you. I'll rewind this for you, dear listener, so you can hear it again.
Specifically, for more than a year, the CDC has collected data on hospitalization for COVID in the U.S. and broken it down by age, race, and vaccination status. But it has not made most of the information public. In fact, when the CDC did publish the first significant data set just 2 weeks ago, it left out numbers for, quote, a huge portion of the population, which is 18 to 49-year-olds. In other words, What they did is they basically rigged the data to say, hey, boosters work really well for adults who are younger than 65, but then they leave out all of the ability to actually
to 49-year-olds
parse that. So hold on a second. You left out the vast majority of the U.S. population in order to
18 to 49. So they published data that says, hey, it's effective for folks below the age of 65. That would be from 50 to 64.
Why would they do that? I'm so tired of people that have a position of authority abusing it and lying. Wow.
And by the way, guys, keep me honest on my mic levels. I'm working on the audio issues. I get killed. I get killed on audio issues all the time. So we're working like mad to fix them. So if the audio is not coming in clear or if it's really, really clippy, let me know. But I mean, clear manipulation of data to make a point. To your point, the question you asked is, why would you do that? Why?
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I've got a couple friends, you know, me and them Death Fan, we go back and forth all the time on this. We have I've got a friend on the channel. It's a ritual of ours that we argue about this stuff once every 3 days. We continue.
Try and use and sell the public on booster efficacy. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I think if you're old and if you have comorbidities, you should probably get a booster based upon what I can tell. But it's very clear here that they had data which contravened their public narrative, and so they're just not releasing it. And you said this too at the beginning. This is the stuff of people's dreams who believe in vast conspiracy theories. And I mean, how else can you describe it? You have
At some level, we've got to come up with a different terminology to describe those people. Because I don't even know what does conspiracy theorist mean anymore.
It's true.
You know,
Because those people keep turning out to be right.
you know, back in the day, well, I wouldn't say they keep turning out to be right because this doesn't.
Well, okay,
this
for
doesn't
a
valid.
while, I've been hearing people say, you can't trust the CDC. I'm like, come on, what do you mean you can't trust the CDC? If we can't trust the CDC, where are we supposed to get our information? But I really thought the CDC was trustable and reliable. I argued with multiple people on that. And now it turns out I was completely wrong.
Well,
you can't trust the CDC.
Doesn't mean that you're completely. But this right here is the entire problem. Because I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and this doesn't necessarily prove anything, but it does.
What do you mean? How can you trust any of their other numbers?
Well, my point is, it makes them untrustworthy, but it doesn't prove that it doesn't prove all the other conspiracy theories that folks have. You know, I don't even know what terminology to use anymore. But the fact that one group isn't trustworthy doesn't automatically validate the ideas of the other group. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if the other group says, oh, if you have a broken arm, they're going to say you die of COVID. The fact that CDC says X doesn't mean that theory is right either. That's what I'm saying. So, but what I'm saying, most people would go with your vantage point, because I'm notorious for nuancing the hell out of everything. Mm-hmm. So they're gonna go with that and say, see, this means that Joe Schmo was right. Well, I don't know who's right. What I do know is that these folks are they're just, I don't understand the logic here.
Yeah, why?
If you know that our country already has distrust in these institutions, none of us trust Fauci anymore, I don't think. I think it's like 5 people that trust Fauci. I don't even believe Fauci trusts Fauci. And now we've got all these institutions that are being questioned, the media. I mean, nobody, I can't run into a single human being who really believes or takes what CNN has to say seriously anymore. And then you go and do this. Mm-hmm. It's just unbelievable to me. We continue.
The government agency here, which does have data on all of this. You know, for a long time we had the excuse of, state data, it's hard to compile. They basically got it down. They have it all in terms of age and race and vaccination status and everything. And then they just simply refuse to release it. And actually, to their credit, while I believe Israel has done some absolutely bonkers stuff with some of its mandates, the forced shots, etc., they still do release their actual public health data, which gives us the insight to look at what's actually working and what's not.
Well, and that's what's crazy is, if you've been wondering, like, why have they been so dependent on Israel's
this is why.
data? For especially boosters was a big, we kept sorting through the Israeli data to.
That's been a question for me as well.
So what was happening? We were waiting for Israel to
the Israelis keep posting their data as far as breakthrough cases, deaths, hospitalizations, effectiveness or lack thereof of the shot and the boosters. they've been very forthright with it.
Uh-huh.
And so they're almost the only major developed nation that's doing it to that degree.
Okay.
We know that China's data is skewed, and we know that apparently our data is skewed.
Oh my gosh.
So we've all been looking at the Israelis because they've just been pumping out the information. Shout out to the Israelis. Now, if you would just stop occupying your neighbors, we'd all be in good shape. Why is Pfizer refusing to release their efficacy trial data for 75 years?
What's that?
I'll explain that to you later. Okay, we continue.
See the efficacy of boosters. It's because our own supposedly, #1 in the world health agency is hiding. They have the data, but they're not sharing it with anybody. And it's not just on boosters. So they wouldn't release the data. They left out numbers for 18 to 49-year-olds with regards to efficacy of the booster. They also had come under fire for not tracking so-called breakthrough infections in vaccinated Americans, focusing only on individuals who became ill enough to be hospitalized or die, because they didn't, apparently, I mean, this is all you have to read between the lines, but apparently they didn't want people to know how common breakthrough infections were, even though, again, they had that data. And
breakthrough cases, for the uninitiated, are what happens when you get the vaccine and the virus still breaks through the vaccine and you still get sick.
We were like that.
We were vaccinated. We were breakthrough cases, and we were fine. You were down for a day, I was down for a day, and then we went back. The food thing, though, was a problem.
I felt like it was more than just a day, but because we have a family, you had to get up and get going. Like, I had probably like 5 days where I felt kind of like a heavy flu, not like anything crazy.
Unbelievable. But we didn't get hospitalized, so then we didn't get counted as a breakthrough case.
Oh my gosh. That's true. And because we don't have Medicare for all, there's probably hella people that stayed home when they were sick.
Correct.
That never got even reported.
So all the breakthrough cases, I mean, Fauci came out when Omicron came out and said everybody's going to get it, regardless of vaccination status. That's just a fact. But prior to that, that was not the narrative that we were told by the CDC. We continue.
Didn't share it. Apparently, the American Academy of Pediatrics have been asking for the proportion of children hospitalized for COVID that have other medical conditions, so you can understand, okay, what's the risk for a healthy, child versus what's the risk for a child who has other comorbidities. Wouldn't provide that data. The Pediatrics Academy also has repeatedly asked the CDC for an estimate on the contagiousness of a person infected with COVID 5 days after symptoms began. And one of the folks with the Academy finally got the answer from an article in the New York Times versus from the CDC. And so, their justification here, and I just think this is too perfect, and this has been the problem with these public health agencies.
I want to play that again.
Risk for a child who has other comorbidities, wouldn't provide that data to be hospitalized or die, because they didn't, apparently, I mean, this is all you have to read between the lines, but apparently they didn't want people to know how common breakthrough infections were, even though, again, they had that data and didn't share it. Apparently, the American Academy of Pediatrics have been asking for the proportion of children hospitalized for COVID that have other medical conditions, so you can understand, okay, what's the risk for a healthy, child versus what's the risk for a child who has other comorbidities. Wouldn't provide that data. The Pediatrics Academy also has repeatedly asked the CDC for an estimate on the contagiousness of a person infected with COVID 5 days after symptoms began. And one of the folks with the Academy finally got the answer from an article in the New York Times versus from the CDC. And
so these are...
Why? I don't understand.
These are specific institutions and bodies that are dedicated to taking care of kids.
Yeah.
And they're saying, we need this data.
Yeah, so we can help the children.
Why? So that they could give guidance to the parents of these kids. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, et cetera, I'm sure there are other child advocate groups as well in regard to the healthcare field, are saying, hey, CDC, get us this data. And one of them has to find the data from the New York Times.
So the CDC gave the information to the New York Times?
Well, you know, when you're a journalist, you have sources, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm assuming that somebody leaked something else. But like 18 to 49-year-olds, I'm like, you know, we're adults. So we make decisions, et cetera, et cetera. But now we're talking about kids. Mm-hmm. And you've got these well-respected institutions that are saying, hey, get us the data so that we can formulate an informed guidance strategy for parents. That's the assumption that I'm having that these pediatric associations would have. And they had nothing. When our daughter was the first to get COVID, they were kind of like, yeah, just do exactly as, like, it was the exact same guidance. There was nothing particular to children, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, people are like, well, I mean, COVID's COVID. Well, no, because a child's emotional makeup is different than a parent's makeup. Yep. I mean, they were telling us to basically isolate our daughter for 10 days, which our family is particularly a close family. We couldn't do it. We all just ended up with COVID. But they wouldn't give the parent. We don't
recommend that. We're not recommending that.
I'm not recommending that. I'm just saying our daughter.
We did what we could. We kind of created a small little room for her. And
where we were emotionally as a family, certain extracurricular things were happening. It was just not wise for us to do that to our daughter emotionally.
Yeah. Not just her, but all the other kids.
Correct. So did they make a FOIA request? So FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. Can you imagine the pediatric associates having, like, you're supposed to do FOIA requests for like CIA documents.
What's the motive of the CDC? What could possibly be their motive? Are they getting paid off by somebody?
Okay.
What?
So here is one of the running conspiracy theories, and this is one of the things that really got Joe Rogan in trouble. But McCullough gets on there and he basically says that the government is in bed with the pharmaceutical companies because the pharmaceutical companies profit off of, vaccinations and all the rest of it. So the more you believe that you need to be vaccinated, the more money Pfizer and the rest of these other groups are going to make.
Our vaccinations were free, but okay.
Well, nothing is free, right? Because your taxpayer dollars are going to go to X. Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, they're going to win a contract with the government, that type of situation. Yeah. So that's the running conspiracy theory, plus investments and all the rest of it, as Dana's saying. Very good point as well, Dana. So they're saying that there's a financial stake in this. And look, I don't know if that's true. And part of me is like, well, I mean, they could come up with their own therapeutics and make a bunch of money that way. The problem is that you have other therapeutics that, like Joe Rogan with the whole ivermectin situation. His doctor prescribed him ivermectin, and CNN and all the rest of it's horse dewormer, yada, yada, yada. And so maybe the theory is this vaccinations are a corner market, whereas Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson, whatever, and Moderna don't want to have to compete with already existing therapeutic medications. So there's a capitalistic sort of, motivation toward this.
Yeah.
That's the theory. I don't know. But the problem is when you have these information vacuums and then they get exposed, any rational person is going to start asking the question, what are you doing? Why wouldn't you not tell us? And these are not regular citizens. This is the all these pediatric institutions are asking for this information because they're trying to be good doctors and formulate something specified to the really the children that they've dedicated their lives to. Holy smokes.
So, their justification here, and I just think this is too perfect, and this has been the problem with these public health agencies and also with Dr. Fauci from the beginning. It says the agency has been reluctant to make those figures public because they might be misinterpreted as the vaccines being ineffective. It's not your job to psychoanalyze the public.
Yes.
It's not your job to be the politician spinning the data or hiding the ball. It is just your job to disseminate the information and then let us all handle it. I mean, and you've done so much damage in terms of now you don't think.
Now they're losing their credibility. That's the alternative, and that's better for them than giving us all the information and letting us decide.
You dummies. Here's the actual quote from the New York Times, which again I pay $14 a month for. Kristen Nordlund, a spokeswoman for the CDC, said the agency has been slow to release the different streams of data because basically at the end of the day, it's not ready for prime time. So when it goes along with the actual narrative that you've been spinning us for the last 2 years, it's ready for prime time.
Yep.
When it doesn't, it's not ready for prime time. What does that even mean? What the hell does that mean?
I think
she
just said.
She said the agent's priority when gathering any data is to ensure that it's accurate and actionable. But if you leave out the largest chunk in your test group, and then you come to you give us conclusions from from 50 to 64, that's inaccurate. Or at least say tell us up front this data excludes X, Y, and Z. If accuracy was truly your goal, wouldn't you publish that? Another reason is fear that the information may be misinterpreted, which is what Crystal was talking about. What? You guys are just too dumb. You guys are too dumb. You're gonna interpret it another way. This is why all of us need to read 1984. When the government had this thing called doublespeak. Up was down, left was right, right was left, wrong was right, right was wrong. What does misinterpreted mean? The information you gave us, if we took it at face value, would necessarily lead to misinterpretation, ma'am. It's impossible to listen to that and say anything other than the data contradicted your previous pronouncements, and you didn't want the public to be the Joe Rogan public to be vindicated. Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. Holy smoke. And as Crystal, it's not their job. We're not paying you to psychoanalyze us.
No.
But this shows you the mindset of these elitists.
That's how I'm like, how dare you? How dare you withhold that information from us?
They're even more elite than their own fellow compatriots in the medical field, because the pediatric.
Yeah, they wouldn't even give it to them.
So they're more elite than them too, because we know that if we tell you, you're gonna tell those unwashed masses, those parents of those kids that you're trying to take care of.
Okay, again, the CDC, that's government.
Yeah.
What is it with the government?
Federal institution.
We pay them.
Federal
I'm
institution.
really, really getting tired of seeing how the government is bullying us and not giving us the information that they should be giving us when we're the one that pays their bills. This is crazy.
It's unbelievable. This is a form of soft fascism where the government paternalistically decides for you
about our own kids.
What's best for you
and our kids.
And look, this is also what determines vaccine mandates and booster mandates, etc. There are employers that are making employment decisions. Businesses have been shut down, lost completely.
Yep.
That are making these decisions about their employees based on their interpretation of this data. It's unbelievable to me. Unbelievable.
This is going to fuel people's worst fears, and anyone who is skeptical of the vaccine. I mean, this is a dream for them to be able to say.
Look, Crystal, if there is another pandemic, let's say the in terms of its mortality rate is 10 times higher, I'm not going to believe these people for a long time. I don't think I'm the only person. I mean, I would literally have to know and see people falling dead in front of my face to be like, all right, okay, maybe I'll hear him out a little bit. That's not how I felt 2 years ago.
This is exactly the same as at the beginning of the pandemic when Fauci says masks don't work.
No, I agree.
And it's the same. And after the fact, he even admits it because he thinks he's doing the right thing. He admits that, no, we wanted to save the masks for people who are on the front lines. It's not your job to lie and manipulate people or hide the ball here. It's your job to get out the data. And if the public can't handle that or, deals with it in a bad way, then we have to address that down the line. But this is...
There it is. There it is. Now,
Wow.
if we have another situation in which people are eating bats 2 miles away from another, let's call it the Durala virus lab, okay, in Kenya, and then all of a sudden people start dropping like flies, but you can't call it the Kenya virus because then you'll be a racist. But now people are saying, well, I'm not going to believe anything you guys have to say. I'm not putting nothing in my body. I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not doing it. And we really, truly could be, it's the whole boy who cried wolf situation.
Yep.
The difference
That's
is,
exactly,
the difference is it's the shepherds
Yep.
who are calling wolf.
Wow.
It's the adults.
Jeez.
What? Like you will get your YouTube. This channel's this video is obviously going to be demonetized. How many people have been deplatformed for saying this stuff? And again, look at all my previous videos. I've said you need to wear a mask. I was pro social distancing. I was pro vaccine. We got vaccinated. Our kids didn't get vaccinated. We got vaccinated. And then when it came time for the booster, as we're watching this information, I'm getting less and less and less and less confidence.
Exactly what.
And now we're hearing about myocarditis in men and all the rest of it in association with the booster.
What's that?
It's some heart type of situation for folks
no.
to get the booster too close. It's affecting men. So now you got people saying,
You never
"Whoa,
got the booster, right?
no, we never got the booster." So now you got people going, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa!" Just we got to stop you right there, boss.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
It is absolutely abysmal. I mean, I think what we can say is that we haven't only been dependent on the CDC for data. We have data from health agencies and from research around the world to show us the efficacy of the vaccines, to show us the death rate for different subpopulations, to show us how much more at risk the elderly are. But the fact that our own public health agency that is supposed to be, the premier, the best in the world, has been sitting on this data that could have helped us tailor our response, that could have helped us understand for ourselves in our own lives what risks to take, what decisions to make, what to do with regards to our kids. I mean, this is an absolute bombshell story, and it's despicable that they've been hiding this data.
Yeah, I mean, $1 billion they've been given to modernize.
Okay, I'm going to interact with this a little bit because negative vibes, maybe you missed the first part of this, but the CDC was actively hiding data from 18 to 49-year-olds about booster efficacy. So the risk of myocarditis is way higher if you get COVID than if you get a vaccine. Well, there's a difference, right, between getting the vaccine and getting the booster. That's a point that Joe Rogan got roasted for promoting because it's misleading. Okay, when you say it's misleading, where are you getting your data? Because if it's a CDC, I'm going to question it. Because the CDC published data stating that the vaccine was effective for people less than 65 years old. Wow. But it's just come out, and the New York Times has published this. This is not Rogan or Jimmy Dore. It's just come out that the CDC specifically left out data about booster efficacy from people between 18 and 49 years old. So when you say what you just said, I'm not saying you're wrong, but if you got your data from the CDC, I'm automatically now going to question its validity. Everything is up in the air right now as far as what I'm hearing from the CDC, because this is clear and obvious manipulation. They literally said that they didn't give us the full information about booster efficacy because they did not want people to misinterpret it, and it wasn't ready for prime time. They literally said, "I'll show you again."
All the
Maybe you
people
missed it.
that have been disregarding the CDC, and we've been bringing the information about the CDC, saying this is the CDC. All those people, whether they are vindicated or not, they are going to see this as their vindication.
100%. Said the agency has been slow to release the different streams of data because basically at the end of the day, it's not ready for prime time. And another reason is fear that information might be misinterpreted. That's fair to question if that's the case. They were actually hiding data. Yeah, I haven't seen the full picture yet if that's true. Yeah, look into it. Look into it. And I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is I can't know that that's true. Right. Bro, you had you had a couple pediatric bodies, the local Pediatricians of America, yada yada yada, asking the CDC for data about vaccine efficacy or COVID severity in children, and they refuse to give them the information. So the CDC's these are not just personal citizens. These are guilds of doctors and medical experts who devoted their lives to children, who wanted this data from the CDC so they could formulate child-specific data to tell the parents, and the CDC wouldn't give them the information.
You know what's even crazier is that means their original story doesn't really stand. If they're saying it wasn't ready for prime time because they didn't want to give it to the general public because it might get misinterpreted, well, how about why didn't you give that information to the professionals, the doctors?
Correct.
The doctors are going to miss.
Very, very
what
good.
What about that?
Correct. All these pediatric bodies that were asking you for data. Okay.
Why didn't you give them the information?
So the
let them
elitists,
interpret it to
right?
us?
So the elitists, they don't believe the unwashed masses can understand this kind of information. You did release the data though that went along with your narrative, but why not give it to these medical experts who've been doing pediatric work all their life? Why did one, was it the American Academy of Pediatrics? Why did one of them have to find the answer to their question from the New York Times?
Unbelievable.
So the pediatricians, they were too dumb. That's such a good point. Such a good point. They were too dumb to know the information as well. They were going to misinterpret it too. Yikes. That's such a good point. Holy shit.
Systems in order to track data. But I don't know if you will remember Dr. Deborah Birx, who ended up working for Donald Trump and then eventually left the administration. She put in her memoir that whenever they approached the CDC, they're like, hey, here we have all this money. You guys can update your tracking stuff. They're like, no, we're good. We don't need it. Yeah, they outright rejected it.
Wow.
At the time, it basically had to be forced upon them by Congress. I think there's a couple of things happening here. The immense amount of hubris to think that, oh, well, we just know better. And that's it, which is we can hide the data and we can spin it whichever we want. In a free and open society, and especially in the age of the internet, they can lie to you, but we have the data. We can go on. It doesn't take a genius to read Hebrew. Like, you can just go on and be like, okay, well, human beings are generally the same, so here's how it's working over there. Same thing in New Zealand or South Africa, wherever. Information travels fast, especially in the age of online. And when we see that, they seem to think that they can just continue to manipulate the public and that we're not going to find out that they're lying, and then they end up admitting that they are. Everybody knows that it's very clear that the original promises on vaccination, on masks, and so much more did not turn out to be true. And here's the thing. I don't begrudge. I think it was a noble effort to
I agree. This is my problem. I was talking to a buddy of mine. He's unvaccinated. Mikey, very, very rational guy. And he gave me his rational reasons for why he was unvaccinated. Him and his family are doing good. That's fine. He's a young dude. He's kind of a little bit older than us, but young dude in pretty good shape. Ex-military guy, pretty good shape. And he gave his reasons, and I said, yeah. I mean, a lot of stuff was changing because these scientists, etc., and the government were trying to build an airplane in midair with this virus thing. I mean, the vaccine kind of got pushed out to the public, fast-tracked. Never seen something like that before.
Yeah.
The mandates, the things of that nature, it had just happened, and they were clearly unprepared for it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's no American that would say, oh, you guys... I mean, look, some people had a misunderstanding of how science works. Mm-hmm. There's this idea that all scientists are together in some lab and that they're just objective computer machines and that they can figure everything out. And they don't understand that a lot of it is hypothesis, trial and error, that type of thing. Yeah. And they didn't have the time to do science the way that all of them would have liked to have done science. So all of us reasonable people could say, I understand mask mandate, no mask mandate. Like, I'm willing to forgive that.
Yeah.
I'm willing to forgive that. This shit, though, is unforgivable to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now you have to question everything. Oh, we lost,
Absolutely.
500,000 Americans in 2 years to this. I truly don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the real number is anymore.
We don't know what the real number is, but we do know that within our village, we've come across a lot of people that have lost people because of it. So we do know it's a problem.
Yes. Nobody's denying it's a problem. I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. But I don't know that it is as severe as they were saying that it was.
Yeah.
Based on the fact, 18 to 49, that's the vast
Such a
majority of the
giant
test
chunk.
cases.
I just wish I knew why. Why would they make that decision? Why wouldn't they? Because their reasoning doesn't stand.
Unbelievable. And I will say, I have seen a rash of young men dying of heart attacks.
Yes.
There was one local guy here last week where people were like, oh my God, rest in peace. Now, I don't know if he got the booster or whatever. But it is not normal for a 35-year-old male to just keel over of a heart attack.
Right. We know a guy, he's younger than us. He had a random heart attack. Nobody really knew what it was. They said it was stress-related. And then I have a guy that was younger than I was in college. He's in the hospital. He just had a heart attack. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense.
Try to do it. But soon it became a sinister effort to try and force everybody in order to take up something which is clearly not working the way that they promised to. That doesn't mean that there weren't legitimate benefits. And look, I think a central tenet here of our show is trust people to make a decision for themselves. We can explain it to you. Be like, look, it's going to dramatically reduce your risk of hospitalization and death. That seems pretty worth it to me. Some of the promises on transmission and all that didn't end up working out to be true. Same with the masks. Masks, wearing in June of 2020 when you didn't know that much compared to August of 2020, substantially different.
Yeah.
Same on school closures. I'm willing to even give them the benefit of the doubt in the beginning. But around October, we knew almost everything we needed to know.
Yeah.
And it's now
even by the
a year
time,
and a half later.
it was, time to reopen the schools in the fall.
Oh, yeah.
I think we had enough
knew.
data to know. But it really does go to
Homeschool your kids.
a central theme of this show that you were just alluding to. I mean, this is as anti-populist as it gets.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
We elites and experts know better. And so...
Then even the doctors, to Sori's point. We know better than the doctors. Because you doctors, you like
And
Prometheus.
These people are experts in what, collecting data?
Yeah.
They're not experts they didn't go to school to be doctors.
Well, they did. They did.
Went to school to be doctors?
Yeah. CDC, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I actually know a guy that's a CDC guy, and it's pretty stringent. They are elite, so they know what they're talking about. They absolutely are the elites as far as the medical.
Then that makes me even more wonder, why are they doing this?
But a pediatrician, again, that's what I can't get over. It's like, okay, you don't want the unwashed masses to know. But then why wouldn't you tell the American Academy of Pediatricians then? Because they were going to have this Promethean effect where they would share the knowledge with us. You see what I'm saying? And then once you got back from your doctor and your doctor said, well, here's the real booster efficacy, yada, 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 that obviously has implications for the rest of us, and you didn't want that getting out. That's the only thing I could see, dear listener. Which brings me to this terrifying release from the Department of Homeland Security, dear listener.
Oh my God, what now?
Oh, but here's the last thing I'll say about that New York Times article, which is pretty interesting, from the New York Times. The CDC is a political organization as much as it is a public health organization, said Samuel Scarpino, managing director of pathogen surveillance at the Rockefeller Foundation's Pandemic Prevention Institute. That's a mouthful. The steps that it takes to get something like this relieved are often well outside the control of many of the scientists that work at the CDC.
Oh, man.
So I thought that was important because a lot of times people don't understand how the federal government works. It is submerged in bureaucracy. And all of those bureaucracies have to work together in order to get the data out. It's a similar thing that happened in 9/11.
Okay, this makes me now understand how the New York Times got it.
How so?
Because it's a political organization as well as public health organization.
Correct.
And the scientists that work at the CDC, it seems to me the scientists probably said this information needs to get out.
Correct.
And then somebody leaked it.
Correct.
Their organization was trying to silence them. But if you're a scientist, like, it's about the science.
Correct.
So they're not trying to make it political. It's about the science.
Correct. I'm certain. I'm not familiar with the inner machinations of the CDC, but I would presume that the scientists, doctors, et cetera, collate the data, interpret the data based on their expertise, and then hand it off to X department that is responsible for disseminating the information. And at that level, it becomes political. And it's at that level where this stuff gets intercepted and diluted. And I'm sure there have been a bunch of resignations, et cetera, from the CDC, from these scientists, where they decide to go private. I guarantee you in 2 or 3 years, there's going to be some expose or some book by anonymous sources. But to your point, again, another good point, we shouldn't demonize necessarily the scientists in the CDC, because it may very well be. And look, these guys go into science and things like that because of their curiosity, but they go into these health departments, I believe, with goodwill and with a certain naivete that they're going to be the sort of guardians of the health of the nation.
Yeah.
So I assume goodwill of these scientists. This quote tells me that there's a bunch of bureaucracy that is taking away the purity of their art, is how I would look at it. So, wow, that's crazy. But this leads me, dear listener, to this terrifying bit of news that was published by the Department of Homeland Security on 7 February 2022, in which the Department of Homeland Security, holy smokes, guys.
Yeah, Boyd, he was.
Check this out. The United States remains in a heightened threat environment fueled by several factors, including an online environment filled with false or misleading narratives and conspiracy theories and other forms of mis, dis, and malinformation. And then you go down. The proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. What? Okay? There you go. Now, they mentioned the regular, we hate religion, we're going after mosque and religion and all the rest of it. But they said the number one, or the first, was the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord or undermine public trust in U.S. government institutions. That, dear listener, is what Homeland Security is calling a threat.
Wow. No, you guys are causing that. Wow.
That is the threat. Now now here's something even more terrifying from these individuals. Key factors contributing to the current heightened threat environment include the proliferation of false or misleading narratives which sow discord to undermine public trust in government institutions. For example, there is widespread online proliferation of or misleading narratives regarding unsubstantiated widespread election fraud and COVID-19.
Wow.
Grievances associated with these themes inspired extremist attacks during 2021. Okay, extremist attacks, plural. We had one extremist attack on January 6th. I called that an insurrection. I called it a terrorist act. I called it an attempt to overthrow the government. I said that Mr. Trump should be put away for the rest of his life. And no, not just because he was inciting, riotous behavior in his speech at Giuliani, but because it took him 1.5 hours to deploy the National Guard to assist those overrun Capitol Police. And the Republican governor said I was on the phone for an hour and a half, and this dude would not respond to me. So please, and to this day, not a single Trump supporter has ever been able to explain that to me or justify why that was okay. To this day. So I am not minimizing it. However, that was one attack on our nation. It was quelled quickly. And these people are saying that this is now the number one threat, that and COVID disinformation. Really? So is the Homeland Security now going to stroll over to, I'm assuming they're all over there in District of Columbia. Are they going to stroll over to the CDC and start arresting people for COVID disinformation?
Yeah.
Are they going to start? Are they going to start wiretapping? Are they going to start
Are
they going to start wiretapping the folks at the CDC?
Yeah.
For COVID dis, and malinformation?
Because that's a threat to our security, apparently.
I mean, because the CDC just undermined faith in U.S. government institutions, right? So if we were being consistent and we were going after organizations or people or platforms that are consistently undermining the public's trust in government and governmental institutions, shouldn't we go after the CDC? What about the media? I'm talking about legacy media. I'm not talking about people in their garage like Jimmy Dore or people who are high on DMT half the time. Holy smokes. Check this out, guys. It gets better or worse depending on your perspective. Look at this right here. As COVID-19 restrictions continue to decrease nationwide, increased access to commercial and government facilities and the rising number of mass gatherings could provide increased opportunities for individuals looking to commit acts of violence to do so, often with little or no warning. Meanwhile, COVID-19 mitigation measures, particularly COVID-19 vaccine and mask mandates, have been used by domestic violent extremists to justify violence since 2020 and could continue to expire these extremists to target government, healthcare, and academic institutions that they associate with those measures. What are you talking about? Has there been some concerted attacks against government buildings and things of that nature because of these mandates?
So they're basically trying to say, because the mandates are getting kind of like pulled back, people are going to start gathering again, and that could be a threat.
Right.
Whoa.
Which is literally
that's crazy.
Literally our constitutional right, the right to assemble.
Yeah.
What they're saying is because we're now lifting COVID restrictions, these unwashed people can now gather together again.
Okay. This has gone way too far.
What?
Wow, this has gone way too
that's
far.
part of your factoring in of the threat assessment?
Wow.
Really?
That's how governments have taken control of people.
Dear listener,
is by making them not gather. Wow,
they're
that's
literally
crazy.
saying the right to assemble.
This is what people were saying. They said you let them have it because of the COVID thing, and they're not going to want to give it back.
This is what I've been telling y'all. Remember,
It's
I told you.
madness.
I said 9/11 really happened to us, but then you had the Patriot Act, and they will not give that power back. And by the way, dear listener, don't get it twisted. The Patriot Act has not fully and completely and totally been repealed. Remember the Obama Verizon scandal. Remember Edward Snowden. And this is why, dear listener, I have been talking about Canada. People are coming to me. Well, the leaders that started this thing were racist. I don't care. Well, there was a Nazi flag. I don't care. The government saying we're going to seize your financial assets for being a protester. The government trampling old ladies in walkers and then smirking about it. The woman has a broken clavicle. And all these people, oh, I don't care if a white nationalist gets hurt. I'm like, you do realize that was a full-blooded Mohawk indigenous person. She was an elder in her tribe. Well, that's neither here nor there.
Oh, my goodness.
That is a bigger threat, dear listener.
Wow.
Than the fact that the people who, quote, started are racist or don't like immigrants or whatever. I don't care if they don't like immigrants. First of all, again, it is ridiculous to try to characterize the entire trucker thing as a racist, right-wing, white, whatever. But I don't even care. This man overstepped his bounds as a leader. The Canadian Civil Liberties organizations are filing suit against him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I read it yesterday. They said that this is impossible to harmonize with our charter. And this is what people don't understand because they're so emotional. The minute they hear racist or whatever, then your mind completely shuts off. Think about what's happening. You got one government saying, well, one of the downsides of COVID restrictions being released is now these people can gather together in mass gatherings. And then up north, you got people, private citizens who gave money because they support a cause. We're going to go in, we're going to freeze your assets. We're going to shut down your business. I saw something recently on Twitter. I don't know if it's true, where a restaurant basically got shut down because they gave free sandwiches to the truckers.
I knew it. Wow.
You had that police chief over there in Canada saying, if you're a cop and you did anything to aid and comfort these people, including food and water. He literally listed food and water. If you're a cop and you gave food and water, we're going to fire, we're going to go after you, you're going to prosecute you to the fullest extent of the law.
But if you trample an old lady
correct.
From the Mohawk tribe or something?
Correct.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
Guys, that's the issue. This is the problem. Is that these people truly believe that they are a class above us and that we need to walk in line and we need to obey them. And if they don't, they're going to punish us.
Wow.
That's what's happening in Canada to nice, smiley, black-faced Trudeau. And now you've got the Department of Homeland Security saying, well, if you promote disinformation, this is a heightened threat. If you don't go along with our party line about COVID, you're part of the heightened threat. And I don't know if you understand the significance of that when you look at the USA Patriot Act. They can tap into your phones. They can do all types of crazy shit, guys. This is not cool. This is not cool at all. So this is why I've been talking a lot about the truckers. This is the reason why. And this is a reason why I don't care if there are 50 racists in that truck organization. I don't care. That does not justify the government overreaching.
Yeah.
It doesn't justify that. Mm-hmm. Secondly, being a racist is not a crime. Saying you don't want I'm an immigrant, but saying you don't want immigrants in your country is not a crime. What is a crime, though, is a government going into your bank account and impeding your ability to feed your family because you think differently than them.
That's crazy.
That is not how democracies or republics, however you want to slice it, are supposed to work. If we don't like people who are against immigrants, then get out in the public square and defeat the argument. Yeah. Not that difficult to do.
Back in the day, people were stuffing their money in their mattresses because they didn't trust.
Unbelievable.
And here we are. Wow.
They cloak their authoritarianism in sympathy for others while actively suppressing the voices we need to hear from. They shout, right-winger to shut dissent down. I'm done with the left. Correct. Although I will say, it's hard because Jimmy Dore is left. Mm-hmm. But I've been shocked at a lot of my leftist friends, man. I really have. The way they've been engaging with this Canadian trucker thing. It's literally the same way the right-wingers were engaging with BLM. It's literally the same thing. It's you take a couple people who are the exception to the rule, and then you make those people the sum total of the entire movement, some of whom are obvious agent provocateurs. Mm-hmm. We saw that in BLM with the umbrella guy who was destroying all this property. People were like, yo, who's this random white guy? Mm-hmm. Turned out the guy was a white supremacist who was there. He admitted to stoke those issues, right?
Yep.
And then that justified the police shooting people in the face and permanently blinding them with rubber bullets. And a bunch of the right wingers were like, hey, you should have followed the law.
No.
And now we've got the same template in reverse. Mm-hmm. And I'm shocked that we're not seeing what is happening here. Mm-hmm. This is the government being heavy-handed and egotistical and unmasking themselves about how they really perceive themselves in relations to the people that they're serving, supposedly. Yep. And now our own government is saying we're in a heightened threat for people who disagree with us about COVID. Holy smokes. All right. Oh my God, Dana's got the comment of the year so far. The left went from defund the police to call the police, stop the honking, real quick.
Well, that's true. Facts.
Dear listener, I'm not here to appease left, right, center, whatever. So I'm going to call it like I see it. But holy shit, we're in trouble. Not left, it's the boutique left. I guess. But unfortunately, this Canada thing, to me, seems to be fracturing progressives a little bit, which is, I think, really unfortunate. Jimmy Dore is holding the line, but there's a lot of folks who I would consider left who are not neoliberals. And their hatred for people on the right blinds them to the danger of government overreach. Because Trudeau has now set a precedent. And what if some crazy far-right guy gets in the government in Canada? And let's say they've got universal health care. Let's say in some strange universe they repeal universal health care because they got this far-right libertarian in Canada, which may not be impossible. Right. But let's just say that happens in some crazy hellscape. And then you guys take to the streets, rightly so. And you agitate and you disrupt. Trudeau has now set this precedent that you can pull this trigger. Yep. And all they got to do is put in a couple Marxist provocateurs, break a couple windows.
That's all I need.
Throw up a Soviet flag. Yep. No, a Soviet flag. And then that's all they'll need to justify crushing you and your dissent and destroying your family, destroying your business and going into your funds and and come on, guys, think. I don't think that there's a planned, coordinated Illuminati sort of. This is what I believe, guys. What I believe is that human beings are corrupt. And I do not believe that power corrupts. I believe power exposes corruption. And that there needs to be a balance of power, however you call that political system. There has to be checks and balances of power. I also believe that the common man and the common woman and the common boy and the common girl are always going to outnumber the government, and as such, they should have ultimate and final say. The government should be there to represent the will of the common people. The elites, by definition, are always going to be in the super minority. That's why they're called elites. I don't resent them for being elites. But what I believe is that the way that God has designed societies to work is that the people in charge answer to the people that they're leading. This is why we make a practice of apologizing to our children. There are multiple reasons I do that, but one of them is to condition our kids to expect their leaders to be accountable to them. There's a million reasons we do it. And there is sincerity behind it, but one of them is I want to condition my daughter to understand that the people who are leading her or who have authority over her should only use that authority for her benefit. In the minute that that power is getting abused, that there should be accountability. So I'm teaching my children that. That's why we apologize to our kids. I would commend that to you. But governments are not supposed to go in there with these heavy-handed tactics and assert their dominance over the populace.
Right.
Not in a democracy. A tyrant will always find a perfect pretext for their tyranny. Correct.
Yep.
All right. So there you go, guys. That's the best that I can do about it. That's the best that I can do about it. And look, I have no problem with the RCMP arresting truckers for blocking critical aspects to access to hospital jobs, etc. But the bank account lockdown is pretty crazy. Well, nobody's against that. Nobody's against that. And look,
I mean, I haven't even heard anything that they've been blocking hospitals.
Here's the last thing I'll say about protests, okay? When you're a protester and you're there are different kinds of protesting. There's like we want this, and that's cool. But then there's that agitation kind of protesting where you're specifically being disruptive. A sit-in, for example. You knew you were going to get arrested.
Yeah.
That's part of it. That goes with it. You know, in the 80s, that was one of the strategies of the pro-life movement. You knew you were going to get arrested. Operation Rescue. You were going to get... John Piper got arrested. John MacArthur got arrested. You were going to stay in jail. You had all these passes to go to jail. That's fine. The draconian measures, though, that gives Mr. Trudeau all of these extra powers, he did not need the Emergencies Act to arrest those truckers who were blockading. I don't even believe they were blockading access to hospitals.
Yeah.
I need to see that shit on video.
Yeah, I agree.
I need to see it.
I agree.
But nobody has a problem with that.
Right.
But when a police chief says, if you give even water to these people, we're going to prosecute you to the full... What? You activate... I mean, I don't know if you guys have looked at all the privileges now that the ruling class has because of this Emergencies Act over there in Canada.
Wow.
Horrible. Okay. We're way over time. Thank you guys so much for hanging out, and do your best, man. Do your best. But good Lord, stay safe.
Take care of each other.
At minimum, I still believe, at least in vaccinations. I do believe in vaccinations, and I do believe they were effective, because even McCullough and Malone were saying that on the Joe Rogan show. But man. All right, Applejack, I'll hit you up because we gotta catch up soon, guys. Guys, if you like the show, thank you very much.
Don't forget to give it a thumbs up.
The more likes and shares that we see of the show, the more frequently we'll do the show. How's that? How about that as a deal? I really don't know how much interest there is on this particular channel, and so I do it kind of sporadically as a hobby. But I will commit to you guys. We'll do it more often if we see that. There's consistent interest in what we have to say. All right, guys. We got to get out of here. And you're welcome for the subtitles. We will continue to enable them, inshallah. All right, guys. We're getting out of here. By the way, if you're a veteran of the other channel, we do have a live stream at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Eastern Standard Time. 6 songs, guys. Emily misses Middle America. Well, if more people miss Middle America, then there you go. So if you like the video, share it, whatever. Send us a screenshot of you sharing the video, and the more and more of those we see, let's say I get 10 screenshots of the video being shared, then I'll say, okay, we need to do it consistently every day for a week, right? So if we get 10 screenshots of you guys sharing this video, then we will commit to doing at least one video a day for a week. I just don't want to waste people's time, and I don't want to waste our time. Okay. Having said that, there, listener, we gotta get out of Dodge. Holy smokes, we're in trouble, y'all. Yikes. In the meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.